to our Reinvent Yourself webinar of this evening. Really happy to see you all here. A warm welcome to you wherever you are joining us from in the world tonight. It's really wonderful to have you here. Good. So we'll get started. So my name is Miranda Grace. Some of you might have seen me before in some of our webinars and retreats with Venus. So I'm a teacher here at Venus. Yeah, one of the reasons why I've lived, how can I say, a kind of varied life before coming to Venus and before coming to the tantric path. And there are some tools and some realizations that really helped me along the way and really helped me in a journey which has changed my life. It's changed the way that I feel about myself. It's changed the way that I feel about and respond to others, my relationships. Really everything has transformed and changed. So it's a real pleasure of mine and a real desire, and really motivates me to be able to share this with other women, and hopefully some of it can work for you too. So is that good? Just give me a shout if you can't see anything. Sorry, going back. So Reinvent Yourself, Authentic Tantra for Women. And we'll go a little bit later into why we use the word authentic and what we are looking at specifically in terms of what Tantra can do for women, because this is a huge part of our mission here at Venus. So Venus is a community of women. We are based in London in the UK, but we also have groups in Manchester. Obviously, most things are online at the moment, which is great because it means that we can reach women from all around the world. But yeah, our base is in the UK, and here are some details of our website and our social media. So our mission at Venus is to bring back feminine values, authentic feminine values. And I'll give some examples of what these are later. And we believe that through bringing back these authentic feminine values, through helping women to awaken to their true nature, to feel more sensual, more powerful, more connected, more spiritually alive and awake, we believe that through this, the whole world can transform, all of society, and that this is really the key to seeing the changes that so many of us want to see in the world, to seeing things more fair, more equal, more loving, more harmonious, more accepting, and with more opportunity to be happy and to live life in a variety of ways, which is something that we certainly feel there could be more of in the world. So today's session, we'll start with my story. So how I stopped caring what others thought and said and started following my inner truth, the voice of my heart. We'll speak a bit about who invented you, so concepts of women and femininity at different points through history, and how you can reinvent yourself and start to follow your truth and your values by listening to your heart, listening to the inside rather than so much of the outside. We'll look at what is the voice of the heart, and we'll do a short guided meditation for this and a self-reflection exercise for connecting to the specific messages or insights that the voice of the heart has for you today. We'll look a bit at what holds us back generally from living authentically as women and how we can free ourselves from some of these constraints or barriers. And finally, we'll look at authentic Tantra. So what was it in the past? What is it now? And how can we apply it to improve all areas of our lives as women? And finally, we'll look at next steps and putting all of this into action. So, my story. These are probably not even the most compromising pictures that I can find, because at some point after starting my spiritual journey, I wisely did a cull of Facebook and other sources, but a few of them are still on there. And now I don't feel so much a need to remove them, because they're part of me and they're part of my history. And the more that I bring acceptance to that, rather than pushing it away, the more I can use it to inform where I'm at now. So I was a big drinker, I was a bit of a party girl, I was a bit wild for pretty much all of my 20s. I realize now that in these compulsions, addictions, in this kind of behavior, ultimately what I was seeking was to connect actually more with myself and with my higher state of being, or with an altered reality. What drinking and partying and hooking up with a lot of men used to give me was a sense of moving into a different space of being. But it was a false sense, because it wasn't one that brought me very much. In fact, it was quite damaging ultimately to me. So I discovered with time, as I started to come onto a spiritual path, that yeah, what I was seeking in the drink and the partying and the serial hookups was an altered experiencing of life. There was something in daily life which I felt was not satisfying me, was not fulfilling me. And that was a good impulse. It was just directed in the wrong direction. And many people do this. They do it through, like I did, through different addictions, through partying. They do it in possibly less damaging but more prolific ways: Netflix, eating, engaging in negative relationships, over-exercising, addiction to the phone. There's, all kinds of behaviors which we use ultimately to try and make ourselves feel better, feel happier, feel more connected to what we consider to be the way we should feel. And that in itself is not a bad impulse. So, part 2. At one point, I recognized that all of this was damaging me. I was sick of the unhealthy relationships, sick of the hangovers. I was beginning to realize that it wasn't making me happy. So I started on a spiritual path. I started practicing yoga. These pictures are about 6 years ago. I was in India. I stopped a lot of these behaviors, and I was abstinent for quite a long period. But what I also kind of stopped or disconnected myself from was my femininity and my erotic energy. As you can see, the energy in some of these pictures, not to say it's not beautiful and it's not me, but there was something in myself, in my being, that I was repressing, or at least not recognizing, that I wasn't allowing to come to light. And I will share a little bit later on about how the tantric path specifically gave me an opportunity to be both spiritual and feminine and sensual at the same time. And in fact, it's a path on which my femininity and my erotic sensual energy were things that could, in fact, help and boost my spirituality, as opposed to, as I perceived it at this period that you see on the screen now, as opposed to being some kind of danger or obstacle. So, who invented you as a woman? So sometime back, before the advent of agriculture, the beginning of agriculture, before the beginning of organized religion, many societies across the world, including here in Europe, were lunar societies, meaning that they were in tune with the cycles and the rhythms of nature. They were often matriarchal, and importantly, women, and especially fertility and the act of birth, were worshipped. They were revered. They were seen as sacred. And that's why we have here these pictures on the right-hand side. Excuse me, on the right-hand side is a pagan goddess of the moon and fertility, Astarte. And on the left is Baubo, the goddess of the yoni, or the female reproductive area. She is a ancient Greek goddess. So yeah, in these societies, women held quite a different position, and certainly fertility and motherhood and the feminine creative potential was regarded very highly. Then, with agriculture and organized religion, women in nature began to be commodified and controlled. And this is still something we see now. It's especially obvious to us in the West, let's say, when we look at the land and at nature, that nature is something that is there to serve us, that it can be controlled, that even others should tell us what we can and can't do with it. And many of us are very disconnected. We don't know where our food is coming from. We don't connect with the trees, with the flowers, with the cycles. So whereas in lunar societies, people were very connected to this. They were very in tune with Mother Nature as a living entity. And what happened at around the same period is, of course, as women become a commodity, they become something that can be owned and controlled. That is, first of all, property of the father, and then is passed on to the husband, often for an exchange of something, goods, money, etc. So that is perhaps the most obvious way in which women were controlled. And the other way, which is the most subtle and the most effective way, and I consider to still happen unconsciously, even in societies like ours, is women controlling each other. And this is done through judgment. I don't like what she's wearing. She's too this. She's too that. Oh, she's a bit easy. She's a bit of a prude. Comparison. So comparison comes from this sense of lack rather than abundance. Comparing ourselves with another woman. Oh, because she has this, because she is beautiful, or because she has this characteristic that I feel I don't have, that means that she has something that I can't have. And there's this direct comparison. Whereas the attitude that I will explain a bit later, the tantric attitude, is very, very different and encourages women to relate to each other in an entirely different way, and not from this place of lack and comparison or competition. So yes, shaming, similar to the judgment, women shaming each other and themselves, because of course the way that you feel about other women is ultimately the way you feel about yourself, because they are an external reflection of you. Yeah, competition, that there is a scarcity. And undoubtedly part of it comes from some kind of evolutionary thing from these agriculture days, that if you weren't somehow protected or you weren't wanted by a man, you were probably physically quite unsafe. Yeah, it's certainly perpetuated by women having this low self-confidence and this attitude of lack. Okay, so creation myths. With the advent of religion, it's kind of the shame narrative continues. Women can't be trusted, women shouldn't trust each other, men can't really trust women, women's sensual and erotic energy is dangerous, it's tempting, men cannot control themselves, and therefore women should control their erotic energy because men are, they can't control themselves somehow. So this is an attitude which is not looking at the erotic energy as something beautiful. It's looking at it as something dangerous, scary, and is also seeing us as kind of unable to manage it and control it. And this is linked to an attitude which I believe still persists, which is this idea that women, in the Bible it was set as a punishment, but this idea that women somehow suffer, that we have periods, we have childbirth, that men make us suffer, this kind of victim martyr role that women often play, of either feeling the victim, often it happens in relationships, or that they are sacrificing themselves for everyone else and everyone should be grateful. Yes, it comes from a perspective, a worldview that sees women as having an energy that is somehow dangerous and they can't control, and is therefore suffering. The tantric tradition, on the other hand, which we'll speak about later, one of the main things it teaches both men and women is how to control the sexual energy, the erotic potential, and use it for higher purposes, rather than allowing it to somehow control you. So yeah, these pictures we have Eve being banished from the garden. We have the kind of suffering martyr statue, and I don't know if you can read it. There's an advert. You're not the first, but do you really care? So with this picture of this young girl. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to tell you that women are commodified in advertising. That's it's sadly so clear. So again, women themselves, we often have this idea that we somehow need rescuing. And that means that we're constantly outsourcing approval and self-worth and power to others. Or where you often a man, but can be other things, a job, or the way we look, certain material possessions, family, outside approval, that we need these things in order to be good. And I don't know if you heard these when you were a child. I think many of us did that. And this is a big way in which we're conditioned, often completely unintentionally and unconsciously, because this is the way that the cycle of conditioning carries on through the generations. We often very automatically say things to children that were said to us, unless we stop and reflect. So the when you phrases, when you get married, when you have children, when you buy a house, whatever it is, there are all kinds of different ones. But it's this assumption and conditional creation of the concept of self. So my future self-worth is somehow based on the when you, the condition. Okay, so what stops us from living authentically as women? We have a few cartoons here about people-pleasing and codependency. Which are very common traits in humans, but particularly in women. So actually on my journey, one of the first steps that I took when I decided to start working on myself was to do 12-step programs. And the first one I did was a codependency one. And they use some statistic like 98% or something of people are codependent. And it's completely culturally accepted. So codependency is when you are depending on something exterior, a person, usually a relationship, to feel good, to feel full in yourself, to feel validated, to feel like your life has meaning. And instead of coming to life and to relating from a place of fullness and authenticity, we come from this place of emptiness, and it's conditional. Someone else needs to do or be something in order for us to be good. So this leads to passivity and to not trusting ourselves. So we can often see this in inability to make decisions, asking constantly for other people's opinions and input. This is something I used to be really bad at. I used to do this a lot, asking for other people's opinions. And it's this externalization of our power. So basing our worth or anchoring our self-concept, even building our lives around exterior things. Another big obstacle, which, as I said before, this applies to many people, but we certainly see it being more common amongst women, is a lack of self-confidence. Women often innately and kind of automatically rate themselves much lower than men in terms of capability, skill sets, and it again kind of plays into this narrative of somehow making ourselves smaller and people pleasing in order to be a good girl, in order to be liked. So yeah, we've got the people pleasing cartoon here. So rather than expressing what we want or how we feel, rather than being authentic, we present the face, and this is often very literal. We present what we think that others want or expect of us. And when you're constantly doing this, kind of as a regular attitude, constantly thinking about what others want, what they expect, whoever the others are, whether it's boyfriend, family, society, whoever, Facebook friends, I don't know. When you're constantly thinking about what the others want and expect, can you really so easily be in touch with what you want? Because it's a projection. You're constantly looking outside and imagining, thinking of what people have said, what you've heard, what the others are doing. Again, going back to this this pattern of comparison and judgment and competition that women often have and have been conditioned to have as a mode of control amongst themselves. So, you know, when we're in this mindset, it's very difficult to connect to our truth. And we often perceive, and this is something that I think I used to do, I couldn't always distinguish between my truth and someone else's. If you feel to share, by the way, we'll have a sharing later on, but if you feel to share anything in the chat to do with your experiences, things you relate to, things that have helped you, please do so. I'd really love to read what you have to share. But yes, it's really important for people, in order to fulfill their truth and their mission in life, to be able to know what their truth is and what they want, rather than confusing this with society or family or the expectations of others, basically. So part of reinventing yourself is to discover what is your value system. And can I just ask everyone to make sure they're muted, just because we're recording this. So what is your value system? Your personal one. So are you following a personal value system, a religious value system, a societal or a familial one? Often it will be a mixture somehow. And all of them are fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of them. This is a planet of free will and free choice. So there are infinite, really, options as to how we can choose to live our lives. So they're all okay. But what is important is to have an awareness over which one we are choosing, so that we are choosing consciously rather than choosing by default. Because very often the way that life is kind of engineered and plays out is that we follow a series of steps or goals. You know, you graduate high school, you go to university, you get a job, there would be different steps in different cultures. I'm just giving my example. But we follow these, we're kind of hopping from one goal to the next. And our vision is often on the next goal rather than on where we are right now. And when you're doing this, you're kind of acting by default. You're following a pre-decided, often not necessarily by you, set of life stepping stones or milestones. And because you're so focused on the future, you don't often actually stop and turn your attention inwards and say, okay, never mind what other people are doing, never mind what the media is telling me will make me happy, never mind what, even though I love them very much, my family and my friends are doing or saying, what's my truth in this moment? Does your value system work for you? And this is something that we can only really gather on reflection. So we're going to do some reflection and some meditation later. Both of those are great tools for coming to understand what we're actually feeling and where we're actually at, whether something is really working for us or not. Do you feel it keeps you true to yourself? Can you express yourself freely within it? Do you have a multitude of options available to you at any one time within your value system? And an important one that we'll look at in a bit more depth later on, especially from the tantric perspective, is what's your highest truth? What is your ultimate truth? What is ultimately the most important thing to you in this life? So we come onto the voice of the heart. We hear a lot in spirituality and kind of in the New Age about the heart and the voice of the heart. And I understand that for many people, this is a vague concept. It's like, okay, there's this voice, but where does it come from? How do I connect with it? Yeah, they will have an exercise later for being able to feel more how this voice, this inner voice, is for you. So the voice of the heart is related to intuition, not related to impulse. So a lot of times when people say that they're following the heart, often what actually is happening is they're acting more kind of from a kind of compulsion or a lower impulse. The intuition, which comes from the heart and also within the chakra system from all of the upper chakras, basically. It's something which although it can come very naturally and very quickly, it's very integrated. It's never going to lead us in a way that kind of grates with what other things are happening in our life, or is not aligned with other things that are happening. It's the intuition of the heart is always guiding us in the direction that is best and most harmonious for us. So when we start following the voice of the heart, we find that other things fall into place, and that we're feeling a deeper kind of satisfaction. Whereas if we're being perhaps a bit more impulsive and doing more kind of following our desires or what we feel like doing from a more instinctual place, which sometimes serves us, but shouldn't be used all the time because it won't lead us in the optimum direction for us. When we're following this direction, sometimes things can go wrong. We can have conflicts. We can end up in a place where we feel that that we've somehow come off our path. The heart speaks to us through intuitions and through our feelings. A lot of us are really disconnected from our feelings. So connecting every moment, kind of checking in as much as you can, ideally even if you can do it periodically during the day. And for sure, when a strong feeling comes up, stop. Don't react, don't externalize, even just for a few moments, no matter where you are. Go inside and try and feel, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? And what is that telling me? Because feelings are messengers. So they come to us for a reason. If we ignore them, if we push them away, if we drown them, we're not listening to the messages. The role of the mind is to perfectly reflect the contents of the heart. So we speak a lot about the difference between mind and heart coming together and working together, which is the ideal. So the mind is a great helper. It's kind of like a sat nav. So the mind is very good at being logical, at taking orders, at planning the trip. You type in the destination and it can get you there very smoothly. It knows the route, but it doesn't decide the destination. That's the heart's job. The heart has to be the one that gives the impulse, that gives the direction and kind of directs the mind. It's kind of like another analogy we can use for the interaction between the mind and the heart is that it's like a lake. So if the mind is kind of agitated and stirred up, then all the stuff from the bottom of the lake comes to the surface and we can't see anything in it. We certainly can't see our reflection. If the mind is still, if it's calm, if it's connected to the heart, then we can perfectly see our reflection. It's like a mirror. What happens when we start to follow our heart? You start to do what you feel is right. You start to have a much clearer and more confident idea of what is right for you. You realize that the heart has a wisdom that exceeds reason. One of the things that has happened over the years, and especially since the Enlightenment, is this kind of cult of reason and logic and science. And it's very masculine, it's very male dominated, and it's quite dismissive of intuition, of feelings, of creativity, of traditional wisdom, which are all feminine things. So again, like the mind and the heart, the ideal is to have a synergy between the two. There is nothing wrong with science, nothing wrong with logic and common sense. These are all very important things. But what has happened is that the feminine side of wisdom, intuition, feelings has been kind of it's been given a lesser status, which reflects in the way that women feel about themselves and reflects in the way that men feel about women. Women feel that they have to be a certain way in order to not be, called kind of chaotic or irrational. And men can't connect so easily to their inner woman because some of these feminine qualities have been devalued. And we'll look a bit more at other feminine qualities that have been kind of systematically devalued over the years and how we can bring them back both in ourselves and then, of course, in society and in our interactions. So when you're listening to the voice of the heart, you start to live in a state of connection and coherence. So you feel more connected with the others, the things that you do make sense, things kind of follow from each other. There's a kind of step by step where you can see how everything is interconnected and things feed into different lessons and different learnings feed into each other. You develop a renewed and deeper sense of who you are, one that is more permanent, that's not based on things that are constantly changing, like your physicality or your job or where you live or all of these things which are not lasting. You get a more permanent sense of who and what you are. And you start to live more from the perspective of love, because this is the innate state of the heart. So the more we connect with the heart, the more we connect with love as an energy. So we're going to do a short meditation. So for this one, I'll ask you to come into a comfortable sitting position. If you won't be comfortable sitting for 10 minutes, then you can lie down. But the ideal for this is to have the spine straight, because this enables the energies to flow, and we should have kind of clearer and better results if we do it in this way. So I invite you to close your eyes and to feel into your heart. And take a deep breath, breathing in through the nose, into the lungs, and breathing down into the heart and filling your belly. So we're breathing deeply, filling the whole torso up with air. And then we breathe out. We can breathe out through the mouth if we need to get rid of any extra tension. And again, keeping our eyes closed, staying centered. We breathe in through the nose, fill our lungs, heart, and belly with air. We feel ourselves full with this air, with this oxygen and life. And we release it. One more time, we breathe in deeply, filling our whole beings with this air, this life, and we release. And we feel how our minds drop down. Slowly they move down through the face, jaw, neck, chest, into the heart, in the middle of the chest, this heart space. We drop our awareness, our mind, our thoughts into this heart space. And this is where we are right now. This is our place. No past, no future, no conflicts, just presence, here and now. And we feel this space of the heart expanding. So it comes from a physical location or a small point. It begins to expand outwards in a circle. And we can see it taking the form of a bright white light filled with the energy of truth, wisdom, and freedom. And we feel this white light, this energy expand, growing bigger and bigger. With every in-breath, it expands more. If you feel your attention wandering, just bring it back, drop it back down into that light, full space of the heart. And we feel this space grow, expand. It becomes our center. We stay in the space for a few moments more. Breathing, present, full of light. And from this space, keeping our attention here, keeping our full presence here, we ask ourselves the questions. What makes me happy? And just feel, what is the first thought, the first impulse that comes here in this bright centered space of the heart? What makes me happy? And the next question we ask ourselves from this space of the heart to this space of the heart: what is my truth? And we listen for the answer. What is my truth? We feel the wisdom, the light, the fullness of this space, of being centered right here, of breathing, being, thinking, speaking from here. If it helps, you can place both hands on top of your chest. Be centered in this space. And in a moment, we will slowly come back, opening our eyes. But please remain centered in this space. And as we come back, on the screen, there are some questions for the voice of your heart. We just asked 2 of them, and we won't have time for all of them now, but I invite you to choose one of the selection of the 5 here, whichever one jumps out at you, whichever comes to you first is feeling the most prominent, the most urgent, and complete this sentence coming from the space that we were just in, the space of your heart. So it could be, if I didn't care what anyone thought, I would. And you finish the sentence, speaking from you, from your voice of the heart. Could be, I am capable of. Again, without thinking, come here and answer from your inner space. The thing that most inspires or fulfills me in life is, I feel called to. If money were no object, I would. So we'll have a couple of minutes, and if you have time for more than one, that's great. But just focus on spontaneously completing the phrase that you feel most drawn to. And we'll have just one more minute. And we finish the phrase or the sentence that we're on. And I would really love if any of you ladies feel to share your answers in the chat. One of the great ways of challenging feelings like shame or uncertainty or a lack of capability is to speak about it, to give it a voice, because then it can't hide anymore. So when you start speaking that, this is your truth, you start sharing it, already you've taken a step towards living more authentically. You're not hiding, you're not pretending anymore. You are expressing your heart and your truth. I wanted to show you a video, but I think we will have time for this at the end. It's quite short. So now we come on to the kind of second and final part of tonight. So as the webinar is called, Reinvent Yourself, the Authentic Tantric Path for Women. We'll start to look now at the Tantric tradition as it was and as it is kind of specifically in the activities that we do here at Venus. And we'll look at what this can bring to women. And I'll speak a bit about what it brought to me. So the Tantric tradition is one that reveres women, honors women as manifestations of the goddess. So it is, as we were kind of speaking earlier about lunar societies and matriarchal societies, Tantra, the Tantric tradition, is one that similarly very much gives a place of high regard, even honor, even worship to women, female erotic energy and femininity. So in Tantra, all aspects of life and the body are sacred and can be used for our spiritual transformation. So unlike many other paths, in the Tantric tradition, nothing is denied. In fact, Tantra itself, the word means the weaving. So it's weaving all of these different aspects of the embodied earth experience together for the purpose of our transformation. None of them are rejected, none of them are less than, none of them are kind of denied. They are all potentially tools for our awakening. So in history, and we have a couple of pictures here which kind of illustrate it, Tantrics were often considered kind of wild or outside of normal society. They didn't follow societal and religious codes, doing things like living in graveyards, rituals, sacred rituals with the erotic energies, sacred rituals in temples, female disciples, and even female masters. And they didn't adhere to the caste system, unlike most other kind of mainstream branches, certainly of Hinduism. And Tantric spontaneously followed a higher or more permanent order, the divine order. So tuning into universal rhythms, tuning into godly beneficial energies, tuning into the voice of the heart and the soul, tuning into our highest purpose and life mission. And in the Tantric tradition, one of the reasons why it's kind of particular interest as women is that there were often female priestesses or initiators, and it's considered that women are, the Tantric lineage is often passed on through women. And there are some amazing books about this, Tantric Quest by a Westerner, Paul Odier, and The World of Tantra by a Brahmin Bhattacharya. So feminine values and female eroticism are valued and sanctified. And this is really a fundamental part of modern Tantra and of our mission and purpose here at Venus. And this informs all of the activities that we do. So feminine values, I mentioned some earlier, kind of in relation to the mind. So, wisdom, feelings, intuition, creativity. But these would also include empathy, compassion, kindness, love, spontaneity, playfulness, sensuality. Not to say that these aren't values that men can't and don't have and manifest, but they often come more naturally to women. And we consider here at Venus that these feminine values, through kind of reactivating them in ourselves as women, reactivating them in the society more broadly, we can lead to a profound and long-lasting change in the way that things work, which will lead to people being happier, more fulfilled, more at peace. So women actively support, admire, and love each other in the authentic modern tantric tradition. And no more competition, judgment, lack, comparison, shame. And this is really fundamental to what we do here in our activities, especially in our women's tantra circles, which meet regularly every 2 weeks. They're starting very soon. More about that at the end. But we meet as women with the purpose of actively supporting and admiring and loving each other. So without any judgment, without criticism, without conditions, we support each other to be as we are, to express ourselves as much or as little as we feel to in that moment. In Tantra and authentic Tantra, sexuality, eroticism, and couple relationships are not the aim, but tools for fast and efficient spiritual development. And this also includes controlling and directing the erotic energies rather than having it control us, or having it as something that we consider dangerous, that women have to hide and that men can't control themselves around. So in authentic Tantra, we honor and adore our bodies as temples. We see relationships and lovemaking as sacred and see ourselves as unique embodiments of the eternal feminine. So all of this really changes the way you feel about yourself. As inner freedom grows, we can live more authentically and step outside the box. As we change kind of this whole perspective and whole view over who we are, what femininity is, what feminine values are, and what women can do and be, not just from a kind of worldly perspective, like jobs or different roles in society, but from a spiritual perspective, what women can do and be from a spiritual perspective. When we can come to embody this kind of feminine mission, for me, I certainly experienced that it really changed the way that I saw myself. And just going back to the PowerPoint. So yeah, so my story, part 3. Obviously, it's not finished, God willing. But what I liked about these pictures, obviously they're professional, but what I liked about them is I see them as kind of a coming together of me, number 1, the drunken party girl, and me, number 2, the kind of serious yogi who was making efforts to live a better life and to live a happier life, but was also covering something of herself in the process. So this is kind of closer to where I'm at now, and this is something that through Tantra I feel that I've been able to embody more, both being spiritual and being sensual and expressing myself without holding back. So we'll just watch now quickly this video, which we made very recently. It's promoting our Shakti groups, our women's Tantra circles, which the taster is on the 25th of this month. But it's also an artistic video. It's just 1 minute 40. and it expresses something of the reinvention and the sacrality that we aim to share.
Most of us were never taught what it means to be a woman, about our bodies, emotions, desires, or how to have truly loving relationships with ourselves, men, and the world. The ancient tradition of Tantra has so much to offer modern women. In Tantra, women are manifestations of the goddess, the living goddess, and we have everything we need within. Our only task is to reveal our divine gift, our feminine essence. In Venus Women's Tantra circles.
Sorry, ladies, I've just been told that I wasn't sharing. Technical difficulties. Maybe my co-host can share. So while my co-host is hopefully coming to the rescue, let me just take you through some of our events that we have coming up during this month at Venus. So here we go.
Most of us were never taught what it means to be a woman, about our bodies, emotions, desires, or how to have truly loving relationships with ourselves, men, and the world. The ancient tradition of Tantra has so much to offer modern women. In Tantra, women are manifestations of the goddess, the living goddess, and we have everything we need within. Our only task is to reveal our divine gift, our feminine essence. In Venus Women's Tantra circles, together we will rediscover the mysterious, ancient art of being a spiritually awakened woman. On this revolutionary annual course, over 5 modules, we will learn how the tantric path is relevant to and can help women today. We'll reclaim our body's wisdom and come to see it as a sacred temple. We'll amplify our sensuality and natural orgasmic capacity, bring more sacredness and fulfillment into our erotic lives by learning about tantric lovemaking, and gain a higher spiritual perspective upon ourselves, our lives, and the world in general. This course will help us know ourselves, awaken our soul, and access our full potential as spiritual women in all areas of life. We can't wait to take this journey of self-knowledge together.
Thank you all for bearing with me. And I hope you enjoyed our video. I feel like it gives a real flavor of what we're trying to do, and what I can certainly say from my experience, and maybe you can see and perceive from the pictures, is that really this work with femininity and with the tantric perspective upon the body, upon femininity, upon sensuality, and coming together with women in the spirit of love and support rather than competition or lack. It really changed my whole perspective, and it's a blessing because we have the opportunity to do this. You know, now it's online, it's even better when we're in person, but we have the opportunity to come together in this way that many women around the world don't, and that many women in history didn't. So I like to think that we're not just doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it for all of them too. So let me finally share the upcoming events. Thank you so much. They're pasted in the chat. So this week, on the 25th, we have the Women's Tantra Circle free taster. And there is the Zoom link to register. On Monday the 1st, next week, we have Euphoric Dance, another free taster to this dance course. And very special event, we have the Awakening Shakti weekend, so a full weekend immersion just in time for International Women's Day. And we are starting, there's a new special offer which started today in the spirit of sisterhood, that if you bring a friend, you can both join for a special combined price, which is, so the full price at the moment is £110, and the special combined price, if you join together, that will involve kind of organising it as a pair, and paying together, is £65 each, and that starts today. So thank you all so much for being here, for supporting Venus, for supporting the reawakening of feminine values, and of feminine sensuality and sensual power in ourselves, in our relationships and in the world. Thank you so much for your presence and for your heartful participation. If anyone would like to share by voice or on the chat, any revelations, anything that has come up for you, that's extremely welcome. And if not, then I really would love and hope to see you all at the taster on the 25th, and or at the Awakening Shakti weekend retreat on the 6th and 7th of March. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. That was so good and lovely and gorgeous. Thank you so much.